Good evening. I'm Cynthia Strauss, and I'm a WGBH trustee and chairman of the Ralph Lowell Society. And I have the honor of welcoming you to our third annual Meet the Producer event. And I hope you're as excited as I am. I really believe these events are typically so popular because of three things. One, we get to be together in a room of people who are really engaged in WGBH's mission to be a local and national leader in providing top quality, enlightening public media for all. Second, we get to learn more about one of WGBH's most well-known products, Masterpiece Theater, tonight. Masterpiece has been inspiring audiences for almost 50 years. And we also get to meet with and hear insider perspectives from some of the amazing talent that really makes the magic happen today and in the future. I also get to thank you all because you know that none of this could happen without private donor support from people like you. And I get to say thank you from the trustees, from the Ralph Lowell Society Committee, and you might see some of the people's name tags marked as such tonight. And I thank everyone who's a member of the Ralph Lowell Society, their guests, members of the great Blue Hill Society, and of course, supporters of the Masterpiece Trust. Now you know that tonight we have the wonderful opportunity of engaging with Rebecca Eaton, and she's been the executive producer of Masterpiece since 1985. And she's been named, interestingly, by Time Magazine, one of the 100 most influential people, and she's earned an OBE, Order of the British Empire, for her distinguished career. Engaging with Rebecca will be our Emmy Award-winning executive arts producer and host of Open Studio, Jared Bowen. And he's going to talk to her about sharing some of her storied career, what it means to make a masterpiece, and of course, take our questions, which is always part of one of these wonderful evenings. So as Jared and Rebecca come up, we get a chance to look at a clip that attempts to capture some of Masterpiece's enduring 50 years of productions.
I'm getting older now. It's harder to get up when I do that.
Keep trying, Jared.
So we are delighted to be here with you, Rebecca Eaton.
Well, how about with them?
And all of you. And so the challenge for me is always, so Rebecca and I are actually very good friends, full disclosure. So the challenge is always to do an interview with her that is fresh for me. So I will try to do that for your benefit. I think we have a lot of fun together.
So what that means is Jared's going to ask me questions that he's never asked me before, kind of provocative ones, so I can't give my straight, my usual answer. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, I can tell you the last time that Rebecca and I went out, we woke up the next morning behind a dumpster in Lynn. So
No, that's not true. Not true.
Anything can happen.
It was a dumpster in Hampstead.
So whenever I call you, you're either going to the Golden Globes or you're reading scripts. Yeah. Is that how all of this begins, is the script reading process, and what are you looking for?
How does it begin? Well, it does begin with the script, because the old expression, if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage. You need a script that tells a story, that has characters that you believe, like all of these. And I can't watch this enough, and I've seen it a lot of times because it reminds me of all those great moments that we all love. So it's usually a script. It can sometimes be a pitch. It can be a lunch in London. I go to London, twice a year, maybe 3 times a year, and hear about somebody's great idea of what they want to do. But that's not enough. It has to become an idea. It has to get a writer, like the great Andrew Davis. You probably know who Andrew Davis is. He has written most of the things that you saw up there, the period adaptations of Bleak House, Middlemarch, The Way We Live Now, Daniel Deronda, Mother Love with Diana Rigg all those years ago. So a great writer. And then, of course, we're not the only ones who can make it happen. A British broadcaster has to come around and put most of the money in. But I have to have that feeling in reading the script of, I really do want to know what's going to happen on the next page.
And can you envision the piece as you're reading? Are you casting in your head as you're reading?
Yeah, it's exhausting to read scripts. It's exhausting because you would think it's easy. You just kind of read the story, but it isn't that, because you are picturing the characters. Like when you read a novel, you picture the characters, and here you're really picturing the characters and the location and the setting. You're beginning to maybe hear a soundtrack of music. You're beginning to think about lighting. And this is just from reading the words. So I do think you kind of make it in your head, which then can become really jarring when you see the ones that they really make. And that is the next stage, the casting. The casting directors in England, of course, have their eyes out for the best new talent. And so many of these actors that you see were discovered and put into series that then became huge hits. I mean, a lot of the Downton Abbey actors really hadn't worked a lot before. Some of them, of course, like Maggie and Jim Carter and Penelope Wilton had done a lot of work, but the others either had been kind of working along, just doing kind of other things until they got this huge hit. But anyway, when I finally see it, it can be with a completely different person than I ever pictured to play. I mean, I never would have pictured Benedict Cumberbatch playing Sherlock Holmes.
Who did you picture?
I didn't picture anybody. In fact, I didn't think they should do another Sherlock Holmes. This is how good I am at this job.
Yeah. See? Plus one for Jared.
This was a long time ago because the BBC decided to do Sherlock Holmes with Stephen Moffat writing it. Stephen Moffat had written Doctor Who. I'm not a huge Doctor Who fan. In fact, to tell the truth, I've never even seen Doctor Who, so I didn't really know who Stephen Moffat was. And okay, we're going to do Sherlock. Stephen Moffat's going to write it, and we're going to cast Benedict Cumberbatch. And I said, oh, not Benedict Cumberbatch. Not because of his name, but because he had been in lots and lots of things, which you, if you watch Masterpiece, have seen. He was in a piece that we did, a very unmemorable piece called The Last Enemy. And when I met Benedict and got to know him, I said, what was that? It was like a spy thriller contemporary piece, and I never understood it. And I said, Benedict, what was that all about? And he said, I don't know. But he had shown up a lot, and he isn't, and he would be the first to say it, he isn't a matinee idol. He describes himself as a young otter. His face, he says thinks he looks like a young otter.
That is a whole thing online, by the way.
Then after he said it, then it became a whatever. It is online. So where was I? What was I? Oh, Sherlock. So they cast him. We don't need another Sherlock. And Benedict Cumberbatch to play Sherlock, that's not what I always pictured Sherlock as being very dark, like Jeremy Brett, or like Basil Rathbone. And they did it. Then Erin Delaney, who's a woman who works in our office, post-production producer, said, Stephen Moffat wrote it? Benedict, we have to. So I said, okay, Erin, I'll do it for you. And so we did it. Well, it worked out.
That's what strikes me. Even at this point in your career, 35 years almost?
What, producing this?
Yes,
or
yeah.
By,
yeah. That it's not a science.
Oh, God, no, not a science. It's a gamble. It's a gamble. It's a crapshoot. It's really tricky. I mean, it is called Masterpiece and Masterpiece Theater, but I would be the first to say they haven't all been masterpieces. There have been some minor pieces, too, that you make a decision or choose a show, and it sort of doesn't work. The other part that's a gamble is whether or not we will actually get it, because we have to be in the right place at the right time to know it's happening, to bid successfully for it, to have the money to pay for it.
Well, I wonder that too about, I mean, there is this historic partnership that WGBH and Masterpiece have had with these British counterparts and production companies. How does that serve you now, especially in this world of the others, the Amazons, the Netflixes?
The others. Well, it's the golden rule, you know. He who has the gold makes the rules. And it is a very volatile television landscape. I'm sure you all know this because you have so many choices of what to watch, as do we. So how does that affect us? Well, in a way, it's an opportunity because Masterpiece is above all a curated series. I mean, I think of myself as the curator, the chooser of what I think you would want to see. And that does a lot of work for you, arguably for the viewer already. In other words, it's an anthology series with a history and a brand, and you can't get brands like Masterpiece anymore. I don't think there'll ever be a series that lasts for 50 years in our future. So we have a niche of high-end British drama, mostly costume drama, lots of adaptations, and mysteries. And they are usually fairly cerebral mysteries. We used to say we did non-bloody murders. You know, we just, the thinking man's murder. They're getting a little bloodier now. So I think there is an opportunity for us to be niche, but a big niche, and to be there when you're trying to figure out, or when a viewer is trying to figure out, I feel like watching drama, what, to come here, and practically anything you would find here would be kind of in that wheelhouse of high-end British drama. So that's the good part. The bad part is that there are entities with extremely deep pockets, and they're the story of the Crown. So here's, I mean, that should have been on Masterpiece, shouldn't it? And the people who produced it are people in England who had produced for us. They had done Wallander for us, we knew them. And yet they took it straight to Netflix and Amazon and Showtime. And apparently they walked into the guy's office at Netflix and he just wrote the check right there because it was so perfect for what Netflix was trying to do, and it was a whopper check. So there will be things like that which the big entities need for global reasons, for business reasons, rather than the way we program, which is kind of specifically for our audience, knowing very well who our audience is, but hoping to bring in younger people all the time. Interestingly, the Masterpiece audience, the average age of Masterpiece, what do you think it is? Yeah, 60s. And yet, it has been 60s for as long as I've been doing this job. So, is everybody just frozen there, or what's the deal? Or somebody said, well, yeah, they all died, but nobody turned the TV off. But that's No. So what that means is that people grow into Masterpiece, grow up and come to Masterpiece, and obviously older viewers go on to the great Masterpiece in the sky. And so that says, again, it's a niche, and everybody's very concerned with younger viewers, which we find when we do a certain kind of show like Downton Abbey, Sherlock, or Victoria. Younger people come to us, but younger people don't support public television is the other thing, and we are trying very hard to make sure that members, like your generous selves, still contribute to their local stations because that keeps the lights on everywhere. So we have to keep this niche audience in mind and never lose sight of what we think will work there, but continue to make sure we're not forgetting something a little edgier. Maybe Sherlock. Sherlock was quite controversial with our traditional audience. Like, what is this? I can't understand it. It's too fast. A lot of people felt that. And yet, younger people were loving it and coming to it in different ways, not sitting down and watching it at 9 o'clock on Sunday nights, but finding it other ways, which is a whole other story of other ways to see Masterpiece.
Did you and Meryl Streep have the same boyfriend? How did that question get in there?
Should I tell the truth? Yes, we did. We did. Not at the same time. She went first. Here's the story. We both went to Vassar College, Poughkeepsie, New York. And she was a couple of years behind me, but only a couple of years. And she then, I think when she went to Yale Drama School, at some point, she did have a relationship with the guy. And maybe 10 years later, a mutual friend suggested that we get together here in Boston. And so I went out with him for a while. Then I met Meryl. I hadn't known her at Vassar, and I met her at the Golden Globes. And the Golden Globes are, as you probably know, a huge party. They're all tables, and people are up there getting awards, but down here people are just drinking and talking. And I walked to her table and introduced myself, and she was great. And we chatted, and I said, And then we just got down and compared notes on Bob Levin.
Wait, what was his name?
Nothing, never mind.
Who heard that? It was Bob something.
No, never mind. She was so great. I just have to tell one other Meryl story. I just love that woman. And she's a very hard-working mother. You know, she's had 4 kids, and she works and works and works. Her husband's a sculptor. And my ex-husband is a sculptor, and I had a daughter. And at some point, I was trying to get Meryl to do Glass Menagerie, to play the mother in Glass Menagerie. And it looked like she would, but I needed to talk to her. So in order to call Meryl, you kind of call and book, and somebody goes and gets you and gets her. So her secretary said, Meryl is on the line. And so I came on, I said hello, and I didn't hear anything. So I sat waiting because I thought they were going to get her. And so I was sitting there, and I'm, just kind of making a list of things I had to do, and I might have filed my nails, just kind of waiting for Meryl. And then I heard a noise that sounded like somebody going, I said, hello? And Meryl said, hello? And I said, Meryl, it's Rebecca. And she said, hi. I said, I'm so sorry. Did you just come on the line? She said, no, I've been sitting here for 10 or 15 minutes. I said, so was I. And she said, wasn't it great? It just had nothing to do.
So back to what you were just saying about Masterpiece gets a little bloodier. You think about what you're programming, but there is a brand, there is a sensibility. How much freedom do you feel you have to play with the content?
Play with the content. You should ask this audience, actually, how much you want us to play with the content. I like to choose things that push a little bit. Our audience is so loyal that it would be very hard to completely alienate them and push them away. But we have done things that I knew ahead of time would not be ratings successes, that would be critically well thought of, and also would bring a little bit of an audience, but would be important to do. And there was one we did just last year, a couple of them. One was called The Man in the Orange Shirt, which some of you may have seen, not a big audience, but Vanessa Redgrave was in it, and it was a story of 2 generations. A young man in World War II who was engaged to be married and fell in love with another man, and couldn't tell his wife, got married, what happened in their life, and then his grandson's story, which was a contemporary story. And I thought it was very moving and very telling, because the unhappiness of the gay guy in the 40s was one kind of secrecy and unhappiness, and the loneliness of the young gay man, contemporary gay man, who was promiscuous and his sexuality was accepted, but he couldn't find a partner, and there was a sadness. I thought this was really good to do. We also did Ian McEwan's The Child in Time, which was a book about a child who goes missing. And as soon as I say that, a lot of you would say, well, I'm not going to watch that. And I understand it, but the reason I thought it was good was because Benedict Cumberbatch was in it. And it was actually, when you can bear to realize this child really is missing, it is about the healing in the marriage and how you deal when you have a little 4-year-old child who is gone for good, how you incorporate that in your life. So anyway, I'm not sure what your question was, but that was my
It was
answer.
basically about pushing the envelope. How much
I don't
you
know
feel.
that push. Sherlock was
Well,
probably the pushiest thing we've done in a long time.
And it worked.
It sure did.
Yeah. Downton.
Downton.
That was going to be what Downton.
Downton. What was that? Yeah.
You did what with it when it first came by?
Jared.
She didn't take it, is the answer.
Yeah. I passed on it, just as I had passed on Sherlock. Because, and this was a little slightly more legitimate because we were doing the new upstairs downstairs at the time. There was upstairs downstairs back in the day, and then about 7-8 years ago, the BBC did it again. And so I thought, from what I could tell of Downton Abbey before it was made, it looked a lot like that. It was, in a way. And I thought, we shouldn't do 2 of them. What else is around? So I said no, and it made the rounds of all the Hollywood studios, all the networks. Everybody else said no. And then it came back to us. Thank God.
But it must have really energized what you were all doing because suddenly,
completely, yeah.
There's so much conversation about it, so much audience enthusiasm.
Yes, I think it was a huge injection of interest and enthusiasm for public broadcasting. Actually, Paula Kerger said this. I'm not saying it because we knew what we were doing, but because it became a hit, we were part of the national conversation about network television, which PBS often isn't. It's slightly over here being talked about. And stations reported that they were getting new members, and lapsed members were rejoining. We got a sponsor. Viking River Cruises, as they were, and now Viking Cruises, came on right at the second year of Downton, and they have stayed with us. So that rising tide has kept us afloat. Our ratings went way up, and they kind of stayed. They're not up here. This is where Downton is, but they've stayed. Victoria is doing solidly well. So it was a wonderful shock to the system. It was great.
I asked you about scripts earlier and whether you can have a sense, but then looking at some of the, at this time, the younger actors who were in masterpiece productions, Kenneth Branagh, Benedict Cumberbatch, Daniel Radcliffe, Elizabeth Hurley, they were all on the cusp of the fame that they have now at some point.
Helen Mirren.
Helen Mirren.
Yeah.
I thought she was further along when she went into, no, not, okay.
What do you mean, further along in her career?
Her
Oh,
career.
I see what you're asking.
Well, so I'm wondering if you recognized the talent that some of these individuals had.
That's an interesting question, because not all of them have gone on to be big movie stars. There have been some fabulous actors who have kind of stayed doing television. The thing now is that, well, the British actors are in demand now, and they weren't always. I mean, there were the Anthony Hopkins and the Judi Denches and the Maggie Smiths, but then this new younger crop got really popular. Benedict, James Norton, Grantchester, is now gone. He's gone, which is the sad thing about Grantchester. Maybe you don't know this, but you know he's only going to be in a few episodes. Do you know that? Oh, sorry. Ooh, sorry. Yes, there is a new Grantchester vicar who appears this summer. So I think, and then the guy Sean Evans, who plays Endeavour, he's been playing Endeavour now for 6 or 7 seasons. He hasn't made the leap. I don't know whether he's chosen just not to play that game, because you can make the leap and go to Hollywood and say, hi, I'm here, and nobody cares, and then you make the way. And a lot of them have then made their way back to England to continue to do things. But if you're asking me whether I see somebody and as soon as I see them I know they're going to be huge, I think the answer is no.
Yeah. But What I've noticed in my interviews with actors over the years, British versus American actors, is that there's a different kind of perception about what they do. There's a different ethic to what they do.
Oh, yes.
You've seen that.
Well, yes, because you can make a living and have a life as an almost normal person as an actor in England, because they work comfortably between television, radio drama is a viable thing, the theater. A lot of them do a lot of theater work. There's regional theater. They do panto. They do narrations. You can make a living. It's all kind of in London, and it's an okay life. In this country, to be an actor means you want to be famous and make a ton of money, I would say. I mean, there are New York actors, regular New York actors who are always in things every 2 or 3 years in the theater, but that's why I really like watching British actors. I think there are tons of great American actors, but because often they have been trained in repertory, and that means they've had to play all kinds of different characters. But that's how Meryl Streep was trained, actually, and Helen Mirren. They went to drama school, and then they went on and did repertory, rather than just went for the close-up of who's got the most gorgeous face and who will be a star. So, and the actors come a lot. I think many of you have met them because they've come through Boston and they are I find them witty, knowledgeable, introspective, not particularly narcissistic, as actors can be, because it is sort of all about them.
What kind of friendships have you developed with a lot of these big individuals? I know Diana Rigg.
Diana
is a
Rigg.
friend. Helen Mirren.
Well, of course, dear Alistair Cook and Vincent Price became friends, Diana, over the years. But then you become friends kind of during the projects, like shipboard romances. You get to know them very well, and then for the next few years, when I'd go to London, are you free for dinner? Let's have dinner. But it's hard to keep it up. If I'm here, they're traveling. I would say probably the couple that I know the best at this point are Elizabeth McGovern, Lady Grantham, and her husband Simon Curtis, who is a director, and he was a producer. And she's American, and he's British, and he's been a producer. He's done My Week with Marilyn, The Lady in Gold, The Woman in Gold? The Woman in Gold.
Yeah.
And he discovered Daniel Radcliffe when he directed David Copperfield, and he tells the story of casting Daniel Radcliffe. And they were looking and looking and looking for David Copperfield, and they couldn't find him. And Simon tells the story of this little guy coming in, walking in front of him and the other producers to do his audition. And Simon said he walked in and winked at Simon like that. Simon said, whoa, that little guy. So he did his audition, and besides the fact that he looked absolutely gorgeous and those big blue eyes. So I was talking to Daniel Radcliffe, who, by the way, came here and did some publicity and probably sat in one of these chairs. This is a long time ago, and his feet didn't even touch the ground, answering questions about Charles Dickens and David Copperfield. And and I said, no, this is a few years ago when I asked him about that. I said, did you really wink at Simon Curtis? He said, no, I didn't wink at Simon. And he said, I have a little bit of a twitch. I must have twitched. And then Simon said, so they were shooting David Copperfield, and Daniel, it was only 8 or something, he would wander off, and they would be about to do a big scene, and where's Daniel? And he'd be down looking at the fish in the pond, So Simon would go down and sit next to him and say, Dan, come back. This is a big opportunity. Maggie Smith is here, and this is a big deal, and you probably will never get to be in anything quite this big again.
That's a lucrative twitch.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to switch to the show and tell portion of the quiz. So we're going to show a few clips, but also talk about them to get a little bit of the understanding of Rebecca's process too. So we'll start with something that you're all hopefully are watching right now, which is Les Mis.
You look like an angel. I'm utterly at your mercy.
I don't believe you.
Let me prove it.
The ground we walk on, we could fall through at any time and no one would care. But why should it always be like that? Because it is.
Whatever you think, you can never win.
Jean Valjean, you don't think it possible that kindness and love can change a man?
Oh, Cosette, whatever are we gonna do now?
Your little darling won't for nothing in our loving care.
Child should be able to play now and then, especially at Christmas.
Oh, and some people should learn to mind their own business.
You don't know what the world is like.
But I want to see for myself.
Paris is a tinderbox. It'll only take a spark to set it off.
So has there been an adaptation of this sprawling story as sprawling, the comparable equivalent? I mean, the musical is about 17 hours long, and it started last week. It's still playing. I actually love the musical. Watched the first episode last night, and I kept playing the songs in my head a little bit the first part.
Know.
And I know you had to wrestle with that, but I just asked about 7 questions.
Yeah, what was the
So let's start
question?
with, has there ever been an adaptation quite like this?
Not that I know of. This was 6 hours long, BBC. And it was going at Fantine, for instance, in the beginning. In the musical, you don't actually know what happened to her. And I think I love the part about how it all happened to her. It's beautifully done. And you don't kind of go as deep into each of the characters' lives. It's not played for laughs, that's for sure. And yet Olivia Colman is in it, who is so witty, and you'll see more of her scenes coming up. So this is an example of a very important book, a big book. It's a very big book that probably a lot of people haven't read. They may think they've read it, or they should have read it in some class that they were taught, but they haven't. And it's a tricky title to do a television miniseries called Les Miserables. I mean, you got to want to watch it. So I think we knew a little bit what we were in for, but the reason I thought it was important to do was that I do think we pride ourselves on these gorgeous, very authentic BBC, usually does them, production pieces, which are shot on location. We shot in Belgium and France, and beautifully cast and production designed and directed. It really, really is quite monumental. The other thing about it was the casting of Dominic West to play Jean Valjean and David Oyelowo to play Javert. And those are 2 actors. I've never worked with Dominic West before, but we have worked with David Oyelowo, and I was really curious to see how they would do that duet between these 2 men. So my interest in it was that I thought it was a substantial story, a historically important story, that relationship. And then there was the other thing, which is it is about redemption. It really is. It is about forgiveness and hope, endurance. And I thought that's a little contribution we can make to the general malaise of the times. I mean, people are quick to say compare now to then. I mean, it's kind of the same. The rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Yes, there are those comparable things, but the underlying theme of it, that Jean Valjean can forgive himself and Javert can step back from actually killing him, I thought was inspirational and a good thing to do.
For a project like this, especially with this kind of pedigree, does the cast often come intact so you know the full packaging?
They did in this case, but they don't. There's a little bit of history to this, interesting in case. Harvey Weinstein, remember Harvey Weinstein? Harvey Weinstein did War and Peace And he did it for, I think it was on AMC or Lifetime or someplace. Nobody saw it, and they had commercials in it. So the producers of Les Mis really didn't want to do another thing with Harvey, but Harvey had a lot of money and was willing to do this, so gave a lot of money to do this. And so it got into production, and I think they were almost ready to shoot it. And then Harvey went to jail or got into trouble and was no longer involved with it, so it came back on the market. So in other words, it was more fully formed than often things are. They would come to us before they're cast.
Well, our next clip is a film that's in theaters right now. We don't always associate masterpiece with films, but this is the first masterpiece film released theatrically. This is The Chaperone with Elizabeth McGovern.
Wonderful. Oh, good.
Ladies and gentlemen, Louise has recently been accepted to study dance in New York.
She can't go without a chaperone. We haven't been able to find anyone. I'd like to propose myself.
Honey, don't you think...
I would. I'd like to go.
I think we're going to have a wonderful time. What did you think, that they were going to have their way with me in the dining car under the table?
Men don't like candy that's been unwrapped. I have not said anything funny. This is it. Welcome, all of you.
Look at her. She's the best. The girl's a star.
What can I do for you?
I want to learn about my birth parents, sister.
I'm afraid I can't help you with that.
I want to know who I am.
Are you happy with Mr. Carlyle?
Of course I am. I'm very happy.
You look so happy.
How much will it be?
No charge.
I know you're pretty and the boys like you, but I'm here to protect you. I get the ice cream and they get the pleasure of my company.
Are you okay?
I've come a long way to find my records. You might be able to help me. Mrs. Odell? Louise, did Floyd take advantage of you? She will need to prove that she can adhere to the moral code of Delachaux.
I didn't think I would see you again.
You've been so kind to me and you had no reason. You took such a risk.
People can surprise you.
They certainly can.
So an incredibly sweet film. I probably should have said this before, starring Elizabeth McGovern, who's also a producer, so this is her passion project.
Yeah.
I had the benefit of speaking to her about this
Yeah.
as well, where she plays a chaperone, shepherding the young Louise Brooks to New York from conservative Kansas in the 1920s to the wilds of New York in the 1920s, which is very freewheeling. Is Masterpiece getting into the film business now?
Wow, what a business. Boy, I think television is hard. Film. First of all, Elizabeth McGovern, this is really hers because she was doing an audiobook reading as an actress of this book about 8 years ago. And in reading it, she thought, this would be a great TV drama. And she saw herself as the chaperone, because clearly it's about a middle-aged American woman who accompanies this wild teenager to New York. So she bought the rights, and she put the financing together. She called us. We said, we want to come in. PBS Distribution became the U.S. distributor of it. They've done a lot of documentaries, American experience documentaries. So I'm not going to say anything more until you promise that you're going to go to the movie theater and buy a ticket. It has been opened in Boston, I think, for a week and a half, maybe 10 days, and it is worth seeing in a movie theater. I would really recommend it. Will we do more of it? Well, it depends on whether it makes its money back, literally, because it was expensive. It's very expensive to distribute a movie. It was shot entirely in New York City last summer, or summer before last, and that's hard to do these days. You know, most people go off to Canada or they go to Hungary to do it, but it was done on a tight budget in New York City by the director of Downton Abbey, many of the TV episodes of Downton Abbey, Michael Engler. So I would love to do more movies, but it's a tough business. It's a crowded field, and you have to learn exactly how to maneuver exactly what weekend to release it on. You know all this, so it has a chance of doing well. So we had to hold it until the sweet spot of early April, after the Academy Awards are over, because if you think about it, from about September to March, it's just all about the awards and people want to see awards. Then in the summer, it's all about blockbusters and superheroes. So you have to kind of find the sweet spot where it's good to play. So I found it really interesting to learn about the movie business, although I have to say I heard some of the most appalling conference calls with US agents yelling at each other in a way the British never do.
So. I was thinking about this. Right now, TV is the new shiny thing over here. I mean, everybody's talking about episodic television, so this is...
Maybe it's the time for us to go the other way?
That's what I was wondering.
Oh, that's interesting. These films, you can't make a film like this for less than, I don't know, $7 million to make it, and then you have to distribute it, and publicize it. That's a very expensive proposition. The television that we make, the costume dramas that are made episodically, can often be about $2 million an hour to make. So because it can be amortized over many episodes, they can be cheaper to do.
Right, our next and final clip is Beecham House, which I don't know anything about because it's coming up.
Beecham House. Did any of you see Indian Summers? Yeah. Okay, so you like India, you're going to like Beecham House. This is set in a completely different time in India. It's India in 1795. 1795 was before the Raj, before the British came in and kind of ran India. India was being fought over by the British and the French. They each wanted to control it, and there was something called the British East India Company, which is not very well known in this country, but they were like it was a gigantic, very powerful company with an army. And so India was kind of up for grabs. And this story is, it's an original story. It's based sort of on history. I was going to say something else about the Chaperone. Let me just hold that thought about Indian Summers. The thing I was going to say about the Chaperone and about Mrs. Wilson, which you may have seen recently, Ruth Wilson, in her grandmother's story, both of those stories are true. The Chaperone is sort of true in that Louise Brooks did go from Wichita, Kansas to New York City to dance and then became famous. And there was a woman who went with her. All the rest of it is made up of what was going on in this woman's life. So the writer of the book, Laura Moriarty, made all that up. In Ruth's case, that really did happen. Her grandmothers did find her husband dead, and a day or two later, a woman came to the door and said, my husband's things are here. And this woman discovered, Ruth Wilson's grandmother, that her husband had had 2, 3, maybe more wives. So he learned a whole other story. That is true. However, then it was dramatized. So liberties were taken to tell the story, chronology. So that is another thing that I'm very interested in when we do these, of how you can take a piece of history and then populate it with fictional characters. I mean, that is what Downton Abbey is in a way. Or you do a straight adaptation, or you just make something up out of whole cloth. So Beecham House is pretty much made up. And it is made up by Gurinder Chadha. And Gurinder is the woman who made Bend It Like Beckham. Remember Bend It Like Beckham, the movie, Keira Knightley? And Gurinder is Indian, and she had an idea of telling the story of the India that she knew, which was before the Raj. So it's not Jewel in the Crown, it's not Indian Summers, it is about a whole different group of people at that time, with a hero, like Ross Poldark, a hero John Beecham, who comes loving India and wants to live there, but he is kind of pursued by his past and by the political dramas of India at that time.
It's very lush and lavish, as
Yeah.
you'll see. Okay, you read the script. What just came over you after reading that script?
It's a little tricky because we did Indian Summers and we only did 2 seasons. It didn't take off. I think there's some of you who loved it, but
I loved it.
You liked it?
I loved it.
Well, we can't return these things year after year unless the British broadcaster does, because remember the golden rule? You has the golden rule, and they are the primary financiers. And Indian Summers, it was on Channel 4 in the UK for 1 season. It did okay. Came back second season, didn't do as well. So they weren't going to make it. So we had to fold too, because we were only a portion of the funding. So I was hesitant with Beecham House because Indian Summers did okay here, not great. And it wasn't clear to me whether that was because of the way that story was told, what it was. I did hear, for those of you who saw it, this is one thing I heard, that there wasn't a character, a real hero in it, or somebody clearly you could care about. Everybody was slightly ambiguous. I didn't mind that myself. I thought that was kind of interesting, but it didn't sort of help in the ratings. So with this one, it was sort of, should we go to India again? But it was such a different time. This is such a different time there, and a different sensibility, and I really hope you like it, because we're going to do it.
Well, I think we have time for a few questions now.
I have one other thing to say, however.
I'm never in charge when I'm with her. I know that going in, so it's totally okay.
No, what I was going to say is there's something that we're not showing you any pieces of. It's something I'm very excited about. We can't show you any pieces of it because it is being shot right this minute. Jane Austen. Jane Austen wrote a book called Sanditon. You don't know Sanditon,
Does
do you?
anybody know Sanditon? I was wondering this.
There's probably a Jane. Yeah,
one
there's
person,
one.
Yeah.
There's usually one person. It is an unfinished book because she died. Jane Austen died. Andrew Davis, who adapted Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility and Northanger Abbey, and Emma, he's finished the book for Jane Austen. He has developed it as an 8-part television series. It is the story, of course, of a young marriageable woman who goes to a place called Sanditon, which is the first resort in England, the first seaside resort in England. It is being built as a place where the upper classes will come and to take the air and to bathe. So it's the beginning of that whole part of England, that whole culture. And so Charlotte goes, and of course there's a handsome, unavailable, tall, dark, and handsome man, and colorful, funny characters. But it has everything of the Jane Austen, the wonderful Jane Austen world that we love. And it is being shot right now. I haven't seen any cut episodes. They send us what is called the rushes, the dailies. After they shoot, we see everything they've shot. And if you want to really be bored, you can sit down and watch 6 takes of somebody walking into a room and saying good morning, and then they do it again. So that will be on next January, actually in the Victoria slot, because Victoria is on hiatus. There won't be a Victoria next January. Sorry to tell you. I'm not sure that's public. Can you keep that quiet?
I already tweeted it.
Oh, no, you did not. So anyway, so Sanditon will be next January. So
January, this coming January 2020.
2020.
Okay, now may I go to the people?
Yeah.
Okay, we have people with microphones on either side. Who has the first question?
Bless you.
They're coming right up to you.
I've been watching Masterpiece Theater for a long time, and I remember when Alistair Cook introduced each program, and then either he retired or he died. I don't remember.
He retired. He retired.
I think
and
he
then
went to Russell Baker.
Yes.
And he introduced for a while. And then I don't remember if there was somebody after that or you just stopped. And I wondered what was the thinking that went on there, that you discontinued the person who hosted or introduced each program.
Well, we didn't actually just stop. For a few years, we didn't have hosts, but then we did a whole rebranding of Masterpiece. And by the way, it's no longer called Masterpiece Theater. It is called Masterpiece. And we divided it kind of into sections: Masterpiece Classic, Mystery, and Contemporary. And we had different hosts for each. And Laura Linney was the host of Masterpiece for a number of years, did a beautiful job. And she still is the voice of Masterpiece. When you watch it and when it's on the air, if you watch the promos, you'll hear her voice. And Alan Cumming does Mystery, and you will see Alan Cumming because he introduces a few episodes. And Contemporary, there are fewer of them than we originally thought we would do, so there isn't a host. David Tennant did it for a year or so. And anyway, the thinking behind not having Laura there is that, Alistair used to speak for 4 minutes without a teleprompter, by the way, and he would do little essays, either plot summaries or essays on whatever time of English history you were about to see. And even Russell did 90 seconds or 2 minutes of exposition. And then television got a lot more competitive in terms of keeping people's attention in the first minute, because people are buzzing around what to watch. And the feedback we got was, get to the drama. We want to get to the drama. People would get impatient with sitting and listening to some very well-written words, because they always were very well-written. So, and Alan is, he's such a performer that he's, he sort of does his own thing and has a little minute of drama just when he's just saying, Alan Cumming just saying lines. So.
It's all in the eyebrow with Alan.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. So that's that. But Laura is still a member of the family.
Other questions? Right in this last row.
You mentioned at the beginning that you have a look at an episode or two and kind of decide if this is going to be of interest. I bet it's not just you who opines on that, or is it? Or do you have showings to a group of people and see their reaction?
No, we don't do focus groups. We don't do that kind of research. It is truly seat of the pants productions here. It is gut reaction. There are a group of us in the office who look at things, talk about them. These are all of us. And I think there are some, I would just like to say, I think there are some of our staff here tonight. Suzanne, are you somewhere in here, or did she have to sneak out? Suzanne Simpson, standing back there, is the senior series producer, the deputy executive producer, there. And Stephen Ashley, sitting down here, is the senior series producer. And is there anybody else? Anyway, at least the three of us, and sometimes bringing in other people to screen things. In terms of reading the scripts, which is now when we have to do it, that would be me and Suzanne. We really are the ones who read them and decide. Then when we have things that we can do as acquisitions, in other words, they're already made, then the three of us, or maybe a couple of other people, but we don't open it up and see what real people think of these things.
We can just continue down the row here, or right here. Yeah.
Hi, I'm a WGBH supporter, but I actually stream Masterpiece through Amazon Prime.
Aha.
Yeah, it's just easier because it's on my smart TV as opposed to having to watch it on my little tiny laptop, which is no fun at all. How is Masterpiece dealing with the streaming of television? Has that broadened the audience? Has it narrowed the audience? Has it had no effect?
Yeah.
I'm just curious.
I'm glad you asked that, actually, that you asked that. It is Both, because I think that streaming, of course, that means there's just much more television out there for everybody to watch since they invented streaming. That's what Netflix is, and that's what Amazon is. There are two ways you can watch Masterpiece besides its broadcast. There are actually three ways, or probably more than that. But you can watch it Sunday nights at 9 o'clock or when it's repeated. You can get the DVDs. That's pretty old-fashioned now, but you still can buy them or rent them. You can also stream it, and you can stream it two ways. You can stream it for the first week on pbs.org. You can just go on your computer and find it there. But if you are a WGBH member and you pay your dues faithfully, you can watch it on Passport. Do you all know what Passport is? And Passport has a few bugs in the system, but it's getting worked out to be available for all of you, and often you can watch the whole damn thing on Passport. You can binge it before it is rolled out over the weeks. But if you are an Amazon Prime member, okay, who isn't? Maybe raise your hand. You can, for another, I think it's $6 a month, you can get the Masterpiece channel. It is an add-on channel, and it has everything that's on Masterpiece. Now, it doesn't have the whole back catalog, but it has everything that we do for the past few years are there, and some additional stuff. There is additional drama, some of it foreign language stuff, which is quite interesting. So I think it is additive to us because we are discovering that one way or another, after we broadcast something on Sunday night, we will learn 2 or 3 weeks later how many people watched it in catch-up and streaming, whatever, and it can increase the audience by 40%. So it really is additive when people want to watch it, when they feel like at their own time. The difficulty is that there are other streamers, you know, Apple now and Hulu and all those other things are competitive, which keeps us on our toes, and it keeps the continual financial question alive because PBS is PBS, and it gives us the same amount of money every year because that's all they have. And yet, drama, as you can imagine, the costs are going way up, not just because there's so much competition for the titles, but all the actors are charging more, the writers, the directors, to do these high-end dramas. So here we are having arguably invented or created the appetite for this kind of drama in this country over the past 50 years, and now everybody's doing it. So what do? Streaming is one way because there is revenue that comes back to drama from the Amazon channel. That's important to know. But the other thing is we have created the Masterpiece Trust. I think you've probably seen it on the air. Darlene Shiley, as you may have seen, has become kind of the spokesman for the trust. She's been an incredible, loyal contributor to Masterpiece. She believes in it. She has agreed to do it, and she gives us a considerable amount of money. And this is an opportunity I can tell you about something she's done for our 50th anniversary. We have created the anniversary fund, and Darlene said, I will give you $2 million to match with contributions. If you can raise the equivalent money between now and your anniversary, I will match it with $2 million. And that can be gifts of $25,000 or more, which come to the trust and will be counted to that. So she has shown her support for us, and we're eagerly putting the word out that this is a way that will keep us on the road, because the Masterpiece Trust money funds what we do now, and will continue to fund it for its foreseeable future. There are some Masterpiece Trust donors here tonight, and I love them the best of all of you. I can tell you. And you might want to talk to them about it while you're here.
And the 50th anniversary, that's next season, right? Next TV season?
The actual anniversary is January of 2021. Masterpiece went on the air in 1971. And you all watched it then, didn't you? Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, maybe you didn't, Jared.
Other questions?
I appreciated very much your comments about the bloody masterpiece, the bloody mysteries, things becoming more bloody, and also that they are becoming faster.
Yeah.
And in a way, you link that to the difference in audiences that you had between young people who seem to be able to process that faster and like it, versus the older people who actually pay for the programs.
Yeah.
And I just wondered how you're going to resolve that dilemma, and what kind of forecast you have for the faster, bloodier, versus the elegance and the wit that we've come to love.
It is a little bit of the jigsaw that we're doing, of making sure we get the kind of programs that, that we have traditionally done. And we're always going to do those, make sure we are. And every now and then we'll throw in a faster, bloodier one. They're not that bloody. I mean, people do get stabbed and shot, but hey, it's not so bad. I have discovered, this is very interesting, because I'm finding myself a little bit in the other group, the older group, and sometimes we will watch things and I'll kind of wonder, what happened? Who did what? And I remember I used to feel that way about Inspector Morse. I've told this story 100 times, but I love this story. Okay, Inspector Morse, remember John Thaw? And they were head scratchers then. They weren't so much fast as impenetrable. The denouement would come and Morse and Lewis would talk about it. And I remember sitting in the screening room back at the old WGBH building and screening one of these before it went on the air and really listening to it when they were explaining who did what to who. And I didn't get it. I went, huh? Who? Well, who did do what to who? So I called the executive producer, Ted Childs, and I said, Ted, we just looked at the rough cut of it. It's great. John is great. Kevin Whately's great. Oxford's great. But exactly why did the niece of the gardener's mother in 1942 who win the car, what did she have to do with the bone that hung herself in the barn? And he kind of chuckled. He said, oh, Rebecca, I don't know. And then he said, and he said, what I think is, does it really matter? Does it really matter at exactly what time the bishop's suppository rolled under the fridge? I thought it was great. It was great. So it doesn't really matter. Just go with the flow, and figure it out.
Keeping it classy, and that's our end note, actually. So now we get to thank you for being here.
Thank you.
And we're delighted to welcome Cynthia Strauss back to the stage to play us out.
To play us out.
What an act.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. We're here every night, by the way.
And maybe that's a cool way to tell you what's coming up next. And we're going to kick off the summer with another amazing event, but something like we've never done before. And it's going to be an event just take you right back to 1969. Yes, we're going to have a party with bell bottoms and flower crowns, if you're encouraged to do that, because it's an evening inspired by two amazing films, and I have seen some sneak previews. They're amazing. From American Experience. The first is going to be on Woodstock, and the other is on Chasing the Moon. And they have amazing, as is always the case with American Experience, footage you've never seen. But we're going to turn it around and make a wonderful celebration. So the date is easy to remember. It's June 9th, so 6/9, cute. And the place will be here and transformed. So I hope you will try to be there and enjoy the fun. So in the meantime, my invitation is for you all to go out to the atrium and join our reception, each other, and our guests. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you.